Good evening everyone, my name is Erica and I'm a tutor at Coding Kids, and welcome back to the 6th episode of this video series. Today we'll be talking about control flow, so what is it, and we'll also be looking at a couple of control flow blocks in Scratch, hopefully demystify some and identify ones that will be useful. So first of all, what is control flow? In computing, the term essentially means the order in which the instructions in your program are executed. So if we just consider this base program here, once I can get it up and running. So essentially we have this program here. What happens is when we press the space key, then these instructions should execute, So I just want you to pay attention to the order in which they execute. So if we press space to get it started, just observe what Scratch-Cat does. So first he says hello, and then he turns 180 degrees, he waits for 1 second and then thinks, and then resets his orientation. So if you have noticed, then you'll see that the instructions executed from the top down. They went through sequentially. They didn't all happen at once, they didn't happen in a random order, they started here and went down here. This is sort of a linear kind of control flow, but it's not always that simple in programming. There are ways in which we can alter the control flow a little bit. So statements that do actually alter the control flow of your program are called control flow statements. The kind of control flow statements that are available to you do differ depending on the language that you're programming in, but with Scratch there are only 2 different types, so I'll explain them to you now. So we do have loops first of all, and we also have decision-making statements. So loops are kind of a fundamental concept in programming. Essentially what they do is they will continue to repeat the instructions within them until a certain condition is met. So I will just show you now. There are 3 loops in Scratch. So first of all we have this one here, which is repeat X amount of times. So essentially what will happen is it repeats the instructions within it. Let's say turn clockwise 50 degrees. It will repeat this instruction a total of 10 times. So it meets this condition of repeating for 10 times. Then we also have repeat until X. So essentially what this does is it repeats the condition until a certain, it repeats the instruction until a certain condition is met. You'll notice that the sort of shape of this condition has triangular edges. You can find these triangular edge blocks in sensing and operating. You'll see that they have sort of a triangular edge here. You won't need to know this at the moment, but essentially what these triangular blocks are booleans, so they're truth values. They'll either evaluate to truth or false, but you won't have to know about them because we will be going into them in the next episode. But you'll see that, the block actually fits when you put it in. If you try putting in a rounded block, it won't actually work. So back to the point, this loop essentially repeats the instruction until a certain condition is met. The last loop that we have in Scratch is the forever loop. Essentially, quite straightforward, what it does is it repeats forever. Do beware of infinite loops in programming. It doesn't matter so much in Scratch because you can stop things manually with the stop button up here. But if you were programming in Python, for example, an infinite loop could cause your program to freeze. So do bear in mind that sort of a counter to forever is this block here, which is the stop X button. So it can stop all the scripts in your program. It can stop the particular block of scripts, or it can stop all of the scripts in this sprite. So that's a good pairing there. The other type of control flow statements are decision-making ones. So there are 2 decision-making statements in Scratch. You have the if X then block. So what this essentially does is, if a condition is met, then an action will happen. So let me give you the example of, if you do your homework, then you get an ice cream. So if the condition of you doing your homework is met, then the consequence is that you get an ice cream. If you don't do your homework, then nothing really happens. The other decision-making statement that we have is the if then else block. So kind of the same concept, but just a little bit of, adding consequences in there. So using the previous example, if you do your homework, then you get an ice cream. Otherwise, you don't get dinner. So if you do your homework, then you'll get an ice cream. That's one branching path. But if that condition is not met, then you don't get any dinner. So those are the type of controls that we have in Scratch. That's all we have time for this episode. Just a quick note that if you haven't enrolled for classes for term 3, then please be sure to do that because class enrollments close tomorrow at 5 p.m. And stay tuned for the next episode on Sunday where we'll be looking at Booleans. See you on Sunday.